So why am I taking a video with the sky behind me like this? It's because I want to talk about nitrogen. Now, the air around us is nearly 80% nitrogen, and yet we're having all this upset right now because of spiking fertilizer costs, primarily nitrogen fertilizers, but all fertilizers are getting more expensive. The nitrogen fertilizer is made using natural gas, and you wonder why, if 80% of the air is nitrogen, do we need natural gas? Well, it's a long story, and what it comes down to is that natural gas was so cheap for so long that it became less expensive to artificially make it using the Haber-Bosch process, which was discovered by a German, and it was used for mustard gas and then ammunitions in the early 20th century. So pretty nasty stuff, but what we have now is then a modern farming system that's become addicted to cheap, what are called synthetic fertilizers. And I'm an organic farmer, so what I do is I work on getting the nitrogen as much as I can from natural biological processes. And I I can look at the ground here, and you see all these plants growing. And what plants are able to do is take carbon dioxide out of the air, which is only, less than 1% of the air, small percentage compared to nitrogen. But they take the carbon dioxide out of the air and they reduce it. They fix it into forms that are like cellulose and sugars, carbohydrates, etc. And some of that leaks out of the roots and feeds bacteria that had the enzymes that can take the nitrogen out of the air and turn it into a form that is soluble in water and that plant roots can take up. So there's this mutualism. So that's basic biology stuff. And it just turns out that because we had such cheap and abundant natural gas for so long, that it was easy for farmers to bypass this biological process, which takes time and some effort to manage, and instead just keep applying fertilizers to grow crops that were fertilizer demanding, nitrogen demanding, and export those for cash. So what we have to do now to wean ourselves off of natural gas and synthetic fertilizers is go back to the biological processes. And on organic farms, that means keeping a cover as much as you can, growing crops that then feed bacteria. And the bacteria can pull the nitrogen out of the air. So I am going through the process now, because it's the winter, of doing the math on how much nitrogen and other nutrients my crops might need. So I will now show you that math and put some practicality into this sort of, big picture philosophical post. All right, so this is going to be some scratch paper here, some spreadsheets, and I kind of believe in doing the math twice and then buying once. So I'm going to do a top-down approach. So I want to go through how much fertilizer I need and why. So I need to fertilize 2.6 acres this year. I have soil tests that show my macronutrients are fine. I have enough P, K, magnesium. Those are all nice levels. So it really helps to start with good soil. So then what happens is you focus on nitrogen if your other macronutrients are good. And since these are good, I'm going to focus on the feather meal, which is a high nitrogen, 12% nitrogen fertilizer. I could do things like manures, which have these in them, but are lower in N. If I really need N, just go with the high N. Makes it a lot easier to apply. Okay, so here's the key thing. Soil mineralization. Every year, the soil is going to release nutrients, including nitrogen, to the plant roots, just as it breaks down. It goes through cycles of breakdown and building. And what you look at is your organic matter in your soil. So my organic matter is about 4%. That is key. Good organic farms need to have high organic matter, because at 4%, I expect conservatively that the soil itself will generate 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre for me. Now, to put that in perspective, if I look at my average crop need, it's probably about 140 pounds per acre. I'm growing a lot of crops, but I'm just doing this top-down ballpark. So what that means is that if I subtract the 100 pounds I'm going to get from the soil from the 140 pounds I need, then let's say I might want 40 pounds of acre of fertilizer. Okay, so what does this turn out for in terms of feather meal? How do I figure this out? All right, 2.6 acres, 40 pounds an acre. I need 144 pounds of nitrogen. Well, 104 pounds at 12% nitrogen is 867 pounds. But hold on, there's one more step. Not all that 12% nitrogen becomes available. The fertilizer itself has to mineralize. But at a 12% nitrogen, I expect about 75% of it to mineralize, leading to about 1,155 pounds of feather meal I will need. Okay, that's top down. I'm going to do bottom up now. To start to give a perspective on the bottom up, what I'm showing you is these spreadsheets that look at the nitrogen demand per different crops. So I'm growing a lot of these crops, and I can classify my crops by if they're high demanding, low demanding, medium demanding, really not need anything for me. And so the key is to figure out what are these things that are near 100 or above 100. I might need then some help with those. So that's what I've done. That's the bottom up. I'll show you my spreadsheet for that. Here's what it looks like. I have the crop here. It's sort of how demanding it is. I've got the fertilizer I'm using, its percentage, and then basically I turn this into how much fertilizer I'm going to need per plant, per acre, all these rates, and then I can do a summation. Okay, so this column is how much fertilizer I need per my crop. And, I just selected it all, and Excel tells me 1,222 pounds. Wow, that is so close to my top down. I'm super happy. What that means practically, though, is I'm going to probably buy 1,500 pounds to a ton, depending on prices and availability and what form it comes in. But anyway, that's not a lot of material to spread over 2.5 acres. And this is sort of indicative of how actually resource efficient, low input organic farms can be. And if I keep building my cover crop program and you get these, my organic matter maybe even a little higher, I might not need any external nitrogen inputs. And that's sort of the goal eventually is don't worry about nitrogen. Nitrogen comes from the air. Then you go back to managing these, because every time you harvest a crop, you certainly do remove some of these macronutrients.